I think the situation in Somalia today is pretty dire, and it's very concerning. I try to follow it from afar. I talk with a lot of people. Everything that I'm hearing, everything that I'm reading points to a situation of a country in crisis. The electoral process is stuck. There is no consensus on a legitimate way forward. Internally, the divisions between the federal level and some of the member states are, again, in crisis. I think the international arena has been, in a sense, played to Farmajo's advantage, but not to Somalia's. I think this panel was supposed to cover the regional issues. I'll go into that a little bit more, and they do align in a way. I think one of the central problems of President Farmajo's administration has been his desire to have the much greater hand relative to the federal member states, and his unwillingness to consult with them, negotiate with them, and compromise with them. He has sought rather to control and undermine them, which has left the country over the last 3.5 years unable to address major issues successfully. How this has played into the international sphere is in many ways. For example, if you look at the Gulf crisis, where when this broke in, I think it was June of 2017, I was out as ambassador, and at the time, it came about suddenly, and I thought that the president at the time took a courageous and possibly correct position of trying to remain neutral and withstand pressure from UAE in particular to publicly align with UAE and Saudi Arabia against Qatar. Over time, what's happened is that they've become completely aligned, if not dependent upon Qatar, for reportedly large amounts of money coming in unaccountable, used to support the president and his administration. UAE is completely on the outs, although I think still is working with some of the member states as they did before. So the president has supported his position by aligning with Qatar. Conveniently, Turkey has had a longstanding, I think, positive relationship with Somalia, but underscoring Turkey's approach to Somalia has been to boost the federal government, irrespective of who is president. It's more of a philosophical position rather than a personal one, which I think it might be with Qatar. In the Horn of Africa, the president, I think, has acted to weaken relations with Kenya, a very important neighbor, in a way that's rather dramatic and dangerous. And even in the past week, where he has broken relations and he has troops in Ghetto, supposedly to control the border with Kenya, more to, I think, control part of Jubaland and weaken President Madobe's hold. But so the situation with Kenya is very bad. With Ethiopia, it improved with President Abe, Prime Minister Abe, who shifted Ethiopia's position a bit from supporting member states to more support for the federal government, which suited Farmajo. And he created, or was part of, this alliance with Ethiopia and Eritrea. Now, Eritrea, it's not a democratic state. It's a repressive state. It's still not rejoining IGAD, and it doesn't appear to offer Somalia very much as a country, except possibly some, training for security forces and things like that, which again would advantage President Farmajo. And unfortunately, by having these closer relations with Eritrea, he has overlooked, and to some extent maybe disrespected, Djibouti, a longstanding majority Somali partner nation of Somalia. And that one's a bit hard to understand. So in all of these cases, he has aligned the country's international relations to support his position and the federal government. But I'm not sure that in many cases, particularly with Qatar, that it's very sustainable past a Farmaajo administration. So, I think I'll stop there and let some other folks take over and answer questions. Thanks.
Somali President Farmaajo has now threatened to expel the Kenyan forces and indicated that he wants them replaced by Eritrean forces. But under the terms of the agreement that governs AMISOM's troop contributing countries, the Somali government does not have the authority to remove a participating military force. And in any event, the situation is further complicated because Jubaland President Ahmed Madobe has close ties with Kenya and strained relations with Somali President Farmaajo. Somalia is concerned that Kenya might strike a separate deal with President Madobe to secure its border with Somalia. Somalia also has a long-standing territorial dispute with Kenya over their maritime boundary. That is before the International Court of Justice today. Public hearings on the case have been postponed again, now until March of 2021. Kenya and Ethiopia have long disagreed over the best way for Somalia to move forward. Ethiopia has about 4,000 troops in Somalia under AMISOM, and an even larger number that are stationed there on a bilateral basis. The recent outbreak of conflict in Tigray region of Ethiopia caused the Ethiopian government to remove a small number of its troops from the bilateral contingent and return them to Ethiopia. It then disarmed some 200 to 300 Tigrayans who were part of the AMISOM force and confined them to quarters, thus weakening the force structure of the Ethiopian contingent assigned to AMISOM. Now, all of this has happened as the Trump administration announced that it is pulling its force of 700 out of Somalia, relocating them presumably to Kenya and Djibouti. Most of them, as you know, were training the elite Somali Danab force. Some were engaged in special operations against al-Shabaab. And these developments are obviously good news for al-Shabaab, but they also put additional strain on Somali central government forces. All of this is happening in the run-up to parliamentary elections in Somalia and presidential elections, and during machinations by the Gulf states and Turkey, all of whom are pursuing their own national interest vis-a-vis the government in Mogadishu and the different federal states in Somalia. While the major powers, the United States, the European countries, China, and Russia, mostly want political stability in Somalia, you have different ideas on how to achieve that stability and varying degrees of interaction with the different political forces in Somalia. Like the Gulf states and Somalia's neighbors, they too are pursuing their own interests. The internal political divisions in Somalia obviously make it easier for other states to use these divisions for their own purposes. And I think my parting remark is that until the internal political situation in Somalia can become more coherent and more unified, you're going to continue to have all of these outside players messing around for their own reasons and their own purposes, sometimes helping what is happening in Somalia, but oftentimes not. And I think the focus really needs to be upon internal political stability in the country. I look forward to taking questions.